our Tamiya Panzer IV 70A. Obviously, in front of you is the finished kit, and very quickly I will say this is one of the most enjoyable model kits I have built, especially recently, but just in general. The engineering on this kit, the way everything just fits, the way they orchestrated the build, everything about it is top notch. I have heard other good things about this kit. The accessories that it comes with, the way they did the photo etch, everything on this kit, I'd have to give it an A plus. It's some of Tamiya or Tamiya's best work, and I'm very excited to share this build with you guys. So let's get started on. We're gonna go kind of step by step here. So we're gonna start with the front hull. There are not really anything crazy. There's not anything crazy in the front hull here. On the bathtub style hull, you will want to pay attention. There are some, we'll call them little grooves that you have to remove. I don't think if you didn't remove them, it's not a big deal by any means. It's just one of those things that if you don't remove them, there's a chance you could put, I think it's the return rollers in the wrong spot. But just pay attention to the directions. You can see where I sanded that off there. I know cut quickly, but anyways, we're going to get now, this is like the top of the front hull that we're going to work on. A lot of the detail is already molded on, and quite frankly, there's not a ton of detail on this particular tank. This is a late war German tank, so there are a lot of kind of open areas and things, but where there is detail, again, Tamiya nailed it, and they made it impossible to mess up. One of the only areas that I think you could mess up are these the return rollers here. It's not difficult, but they do wobble. So when you're gluing them together, and you'll kind of see as I glue them together here and go to press them into the model, if you don't let them fully dry, there is room for them to wobble so that they're not lined up perfectly straight. So something to watch for, not really something to be concerned about. The base of the return roller, again, on this side in particular, this right-hand side of the tank, there's nothing you could really mess up. But right between the two gas tanks, you can see where I sanded off. That's the area it tells you at the beginning. These would fit there. If you sand it off, no chance they will. Regardless, you won't see that area of the tank. I mean, unless you took the side skirts off and you really looked at it, you're not going to see much of the lower hull on this tank at all, which is good and bad. You know, if you mess up the tracks or something like that, there's a lot of places to hide things here. But as we put on the fuel caps there, some of the stuff that, you know, I like to do, like showing the fuel stains and stuff, probably will get a little lost here, but that's okay. So we have 6 return rollers, actually 8 to make up. You'll want to make sure you attach the ones in the front first, simply because they have that little notch where the tracks are going to fit into. So as long as you're careful, you could put all 8 on at once. I went straight up by the directions just to make sure that I didn't, you know, mess that part up, because the tracks on this kit are very, very nice. I don't love Lincoln length myself, but for Lincoln length, they fit perfect. They're very, very tight, but they fit perfectly tight. So just make sure that you get those on in the right place, or else it's going to be very difficult to line those tracks up. Then after the return rollers, we're going to get, there's some little pieces that go along with the bogies here, but we're just going to do some pretty basic bogie assembly. And once again, as Tamiya always does with their new kits, these bogies they have to be put, you know, on one particular side. As you can see, there's a big and a small hole. You cannot mess this up. The bogey would be upside down, pushing into the return roller. So you'd really know, you'll see me go to kind of fit those parts and identify that, no, I went 0 for 4, but these are the bogies that fit on that side. Again, it is impossible to mess it up, which is one of the things that makes Tamiya so good for beginner or advanced modeler, because we all tend to go a little quick sometimes. Try to get to the next part is going to be the fun part, especially when you're doing road wheels and stuff. We'll go kind of quick through the road wheels. There's not much to look at here. They are, in fact, the same wheels that are on just about every other tank kit. In modeling, you'll see that one little notch. That's where the outside, kind of the cap of that wheel is going to go. The only thing to really note here is there are steel wheels and then like regular old, rubber lined wheels in this kit. If you wanted to, you could put any number of wheels in any particular spot. This kit gives you either 4 steel wheels and then 4 kind of rubber lined, or you do 3 and 5. So we're going to do the 3 and 5. For whatever reason, I think the uneven or odd number will be maybe a little bit more, a little cooler to look at. But you could do it however you want here. It wouldn't be accurate to the kit, but if you want it to be accurate, pay attention. And normally I don't like gluing on wheels. I really do like keeping them off the tank to paint them separately and, get the tire line and everything on these steel wheels, but get them perfect. Again, the side skirts, there's not a lot of light that's going to shine at the bottom of this kit. We don't get poly caps, as I've kind of noticed is the new trend in kits, which I personally dislike. But we're going to go ahead and just glue them on because I don't want to be keeping piles of different wheels and I don't want to mess something up later. So we do get poly caps with the sprockets, which is nice on these drive sprockets because you're going to have to twist them around a little bit to get those tracks to fit. But nothing too crazy there. Next up, we're going to work on the rear panel. Now, these pieces, these E23 pieces, you're going to see this float a little bit. It's a really well thought out fit, how they did it without taking up too much room. When it's in the right spot, you can feel it's in the right spot, but it does float a little bit. So just watch that one. Again, if you get glue somewhere, that's not going to be the end of the world. You won't really see that, but it is, if I had to label anything as a tricky part of the construction of this kit, I guess that piece would be tricky. Aside from that, there's really only a couple pieces that are going to go into the rear panel here. Where the rear sprockets are going to go into, and then there are a couple smaller pieces. So once we get this fully cemented to the hull, or sorry, they're the rear idler wheels. Don't blast me in the comments for that. Once we get that, there are a couple, like I said, really small pieces on the back. So just make sure that, you take your time gluing, let those dry. They are pieces that you could easily knock off. But we really only have about 4 pieces there, so nothing crazy on the rear construction. Something that makes this kit really, really awesome, just looking back through it, and while I was doing it, I have just built the Panzer IV, the Aus G version, maybe a month ago or so. Time flies. Maybe it was longer, maybe it was shorter. But this kit should be the same, right? At least a lot of it should be very, very similar. And maybe a little bit boring if you just built a Panzer IV. It feels like a completely different tank in just about every single way. There were like 1 or 2 things that I noticed they borrowed from the P4's build. But aside from that, you could build them back to back and really not notice really any overlap, which is really, really cool. They just found a way to make it basically a completely different tank, even though it's going to share, so many similarities. We are doing the Lincoln length tracks. Now, this kit does not come with a jig. It, in my opinion, does not need it. You get the top portion and the bottom portion are molded, but the top portion is molded with the sag. You'll see, we'll put it on in a second here, but you're gonna want to use extra thin Tamiya cement here. I obviously didn't let that piece dry quite long enough, but I try to do this as it's drying. You see it's still folding back a little bit. We're just going to tape that down. You want to try to complete the track construction in one go. So there you can see the little slot where the, I guess, forwardmost return roller has that little pin in it. You want to make sure that the tracks line up there and that they're tight in the front. They're going to be really, really tight. There's no room for error on these kits in terms of positioning. If you get them perfectly, they they are perfect. But you just want to make sure you're not letting any of the tracks completely dry here. You want them like 90% dry, but still completely workable. And personally, I like to glue them off the vehicle. What we're going to attempt to do here, as I always try to do, is make them removable so that we can paint them separately, weather them, at least start to weather them separately, things like that. So really taking care here not to get any glue on, any of the return rollers or sprockets or wheels or anything like that. Once you have them, you'll see I had a connection point at the front. There it goes. That is how we glued every other part up except for that part, and then you can just kind of shimmy them off the back. That's how we keep them separate. And you can put them on once the tank is like completely assembled. You can even put on the fenders. It's probably going to be a little bit tight to get that in there, but we'll make do. Speaking of the fenders, that is next. We have some very these are such good examples of why Tamiya has its reputation as such a just making well engineered kits. These fenders are essentially going to keep the lower hull attached. Well, I guess is the upper hull. It's going to keep the upper hull and the lower hull attached together without glue if you want them. Which, if you want to put the tracks on later, that's what we're going to do. Again, you could remove and put on the tracks with them glued on. That's not a big deal. It's a little bit tighter, but if you line these up perfectly, again, it's going to keep the tank. You can lift it up. I wouldn't put that pressure on those pieces, but you can. And it will be a little bit difficult to disassemble. You'll have to disassemble it by pulling it backwards instead of just lifting it up, which again is really, really cool. And it slots in without any sort of seam line or anything like that. Now we're going to start working on the engine deck. So the engine deck has pretty decent amount of pieces, and you'll notice I'm leaving all the tools off. If you've watched any of my other videos, I always leave the tools off until the end. I paint them separately, on a painting jig or just in the box, whatever, just to keep from overpainting and having to go back and correct things. So these pieces we're putting on here are going to hold some spare wheels, which will definitely look cool later on and add a little bit of something to the back. We do get some spare tracks in this kit. We don't get any stowage of any kind. There's no bags, no tarps, nothing like that. So it's one of the only things we have that'll kind of add a little bit of difference to the tank. A little difference in color, right? With the one road wheel, I think we'll do one steel wheel, one kind of road wheel, traditional at least. So that will look good. These pieces are like a little tricky to line up, these kind of air vents, but again, nothing crazy. Just make sure that they are fully in the right spot before you glue them. The other nice thing, this is like one of the only similarities this kit shared with the Panzer IV, which is honestly amazing, are those little connector pieces. And then there's no problem attaching the engine deck. You don't have to wait. You don't, nothing like that. You can really do the entire upper hull and the entire lower hull. Again, you can leave them separate to reattach the tracks and things like that. And to get up inside to spray the inside white is going to be very important. So I would suggest leaving them separate at least until after painting. And then we're just going to attach some lights and some little small pieces in the back. The jack comes in like 5 or 6 pieces, ends up building up really well. You can see I got it in all the pieces on the bottom. I didn't film that construction, but we will we'll build that up off camera. This is going to be the piece if you wanted to put an antenna. I don't build antennas. I don't stretch the sprue. It's just a personal, I've seen a million people do it. They're all still alive. But you get that little card that says, don't breathe it in, it's toxic. And it's got the little Japanese guy, I think, like, not doing so well after he inhales it. So I'm not going to do that inside. I don't have a well enough ventilated closet to do that. But if you wanted to, that's where that would attach. And then pretty soon here, we're going to get to the exhaust on this kit. This is quite possibly, you could make an argument that this is the smartest thing anybody has ever done in model building in general. So I'm excited to show you that. I have not seen this done on another kit. So I'm sure there are kits out there that have done it. Maybe not. Maybe this is the first. So you'll notice when we assemble this piece here, it looks a little bit measly, right? There's this pin for the exhaust, but where's the actual exhaust pipe or exhaust tube? We'll get to that in a second here and show you. For those of us that like to paint and weather things like exhaust that are going to get rusty, assembling them off the kit, this is such an awesome addition. It's such a little thing, but there we have our piece glued on. You see our exhaust pipe is separate, and it just falls into place. So we're going to keep that separate. We're going to weather and everything that separately, and that'll give us just the perfect canvas to do that with, which is really, really cool. Again, I guess I'm amused by the little things, but I thought that was just such a smart idea and something I can't remember if I've seen that before. I don't think I have. So very happy with that. Now we are going to get into, I have the metal gun barrel for this kit. It's the detail up, I think is what Tamiya calls it. So mixed review on this. You get the metal gun barrel. That's good. It's not necessary. The gun barrel that comes with this kit is beautiful. Has a miniature seam line on it. You do not have to get this metal barrel. It by no means is it like a must-do. You do get the full gun assembly for the interior, and it builds up perfectly. So A+ and A+ so far. The only thing is you can't see any of it. Even if you really open the hatches, it's just, there's not enough light. So the other thing that we did talk about in the review is something that we figured would happen is even if you open the hatches, you're displaying the figure, which means at least one hatch is open. Even if you shine a flashlight in there, there's no other interior that goes into this kit. So having the gun there, it's fun to build. Gluing plastic together is my favorite part of this hobby, which makes me sound like a simpleton, but um, it's my favorite part, so I don't mind the additional assembly. There's no miniature parts that are going to make you want to freak out and throw it in the trash can and just use the gun barrel. It's very enjoyable. It is also very well engineered. Everything fits perfect. It's just there's not enough detail to really warrant this detail, which makes it a very interesting addition. It doesn't weigh anything. So my thought is, well, maybe they need it for kind of the counterweight for the metal gun barrel, but again, it doesn't really weigh anything. Maybe they tried it without it and it doesn't work. I don't know. Maybe it is just that little bit of weight that keeps it in place. I built it up, so we have it. And my gun barrel doesn't sag down in the front or anything, but it just feels like, yes, we have more detail, but there's not enough to warrant any interior because there's zero other interior. So it's a really interesting part of the kit, and specifically of the detail up version, or addition to this kit and the other, the 70 Lang. I forget the exact name of it off the top of my head. But if you like a metal gun barrel, it's $14.99. You can get cheaper metal gun barrels. Or if you just want to go through Tamiya, you want a little bit extra construction time. I don't regret it. I think it's a convenience thing, right? It's nice to have the metal gun barrel. It's not a necessity by any means. If you wanted to buy and build this kit without it, go ahead. I think it's probably a smarter option for those of us that maybe obsessed with this hobby and a bunch of add-on parts. It is a nice add-on. It's just by no means necessary. You will see there's like one or two areas. It's in directions 19. It calls for C48. If you look at the detail up instructions, you will see one or two minor differences in the name of the part. It's like C33 instead of C43. That, at least in my mind, is because the detail up is not for this kit. It works with this kit, but it's for the 70 Lang, the one from 2011, the other tank hunter, tank destroyer. It's the same gun. It's the 70L or whatever, but it's technically not made for this kit, and you can tell because there's those one or two part numbers that are different. So just pay attention to that. Either part number would work, but if you're going off of the detail up parts at that point, you'll look and you'll say, there is no piece like that, right? I already used that piece somewhere else. So just keep that in mind. Next, we're going to get the upper hull just glued together. This is it's two pieces, and you see those little arms sticking out and the little kind of circular receiving pieces. They should do that on every part. That it fits together absolutely perfectly. Something else that we'll talk about, and I might have seen me already use instant cement on one metal piece. We'll talk about that in more detail on this kit specifically. I didn't have faith that it would work on the gun barrel just because of the weight. So I'm using super glue. It's technically not super glue. It's Gorilla's instant glue or something like that. And just getting a little bit down in there. We're going to put a little bit on the gun itself. It dries in 15, 30 seconds. Just so that we could get it exactly the way we wanted and not have to worry about it falling out or anything like that. This piece doesn't get glued on. This is another really nice, this is only in the detail up part. So we're kind of going back and forth a little bit there, just because I started doing it before the directions told me to. And then I wanted to get the gun assembly built, but that is literally like a piston that works as the gun goes up and down. All the parts have to be dry for it to do that, but it's really cool. Again, you'll never see it, but as like a little model nerd, when you're moving the gun up and down, you see that piston working. It's really, really cool. So definitely mess around with it once or twice before you attach the gun and kind of see how it works. You want to make sure that you have the gun built, obviously, before you cement it in place, minus a couple of these little pieces that we're going to add on here. That's just how the instructions had it done. There are one or two pieces. The steering wheel you could have done at any point, but there's like one piece that you need to install the turret first, because it attaches to the gun and the turret. Next, we're going to get the top of the fighting compartment all squared away with periscopes. There's some little anchors or hooks on the edges that very nicely attach from the bottom. So you don't have to worry about glue or anything like that or putting them in the wrong spot. They fit perfectly in there. They fit one way. You cannot mess them up, even if you try. And it just gives us just a perfect looking fighting compartment when you flip this upside down. You will want to pay attention to the part is C7. It's that kind of semicircle piece. We're holding it with my left index finger right now on the outside, and then you'll see this little square piece with the little nub on it is going to cement to that, but we're going to leave that piece open as a movable piece. This is going to be very cool. Now, I will most likely end up cementing it in place when I do paint it. It moves with the gun sight. So as the gun sight moves, it'll move that piece, which is really, really cool. It's just going to be a pain to paint. And we're going to risk paint chipping as it kind of moves around if we move it around. So we'll see. These hatches are they're not difficult to install. They're actually, again, geniusly engineered, but they are a little bit just finicky to get perfect. Now, they attach to those little kind of square pieces. What I did is I glued the square pieces on, much like the tracks, wait like 3 to 5 minutes for them to be on there but not dry. And then we're just going to use that, you'll see it right here, to kind of push that in. It's going to push the pieces on the actual hatch out, and then with your thumb you can push them in. Thumb and pointer finger, whatever. But you get the point. That way there's a tight seal. The hatches don't fall off, and we'll keep them completely workable, as we continue to build up the kit here, which is very, very cool. They have a hard time staying open, if I'm being honest. They just don't go back far enough, but it is what it is. They'll stay open when I put the figure in, and I'm not going to keep the other one open anyways because there's no interior. So it's not really a problem that's gonna arise on any occasion. It's just, I heard someone else say it, as a complaint. So if that's a complaint for you, something to keep an eye out for. There are quite a few pieces that we're going to leave off the fighting compartment here. Tools and things like that are, again, all going to be painted in a different color. Now, you could easily attach them and paint the camo over them. I just don't want the whole tank to look like, because it is kind of a blob of a tank, right? It's this big square boxy thing. I want the pieces, the tools and everything to be their natural color, just to break up kind of that blob look. So it's not all, I know it's 3 colors, but so it's not just one big blob of 3 colors. We'll get 4, 5, 6 colors in there, and I think it'll just end up looking a lot better that way. Although you could do some cool chipping effects and stuff like that. So you see, I still have the tank in quite a few different pieces here. We're going to glue some of these together, again, in the painting stage. But in order to get the inside of that fighting compartment painted white, I would also leave that separate. It fits in perfectly and it will hold in place. There's these 2 little pins at the front. That's what holds the fenders in place. But those 2 little slots at the back will hold the fighting compartment. So there's no worry on like that falling off, from the airbrush, the force of the airbrush, anything like that. That will stay in place. This little, I guess it's just the travel lock for the gun to rest. This is going to have a similar construction as the hatches. So we're going to use the same method. We're going to kind of let those set up for a minute or two. Those little, pieces on the bottom. And then we're going to slot that in and kind of clamp it together with our fingers. And that's going to keep that workable. I don't really need it workable, but maybe I'll put the gun in it. I don't have any tanks like that, so it might look kind of cool. If I had to have a complaint about fit on any pieces, it's got to be these. They're Scherzen mounts. I probably butchered that, but that's how it looks on paper. They have slots that they can go into, and they're not difficult to put in place, but the rest of the kit fits completely effortlessly to where a beginner this could be your first model you ever built, and like everything, I guess minus the tracks, but everything would go together perfectly. And then this, you'd probably have some crooked ones. They do take a little bit of work. I feel like mine aren't perfectly lined up, but it is what it is. You just got to look at it a little bit, and it takes a little bit extra work. Once we have that done, we're going to put on these arms here, and these arms fit perfectly. You do have to pay attention to, there are 2 that are similar in the middle, and then the front and the back are completely different. So you do have to, I would suggest putting them on in order, putting them on together, as in like the 2 middle ones together, so that you don't mess up and put them anywhere else. But once again, the middle pieces do not fit in the front and they do not fit in the back. I think the only pieces that might fit in the same spot are the front and back, and even that, you'll see there's a much bigger bend at the end. Even that is probably difficult to mess up. So that is very, very cool. And now we're going to add the bar that goes across that's going to hold our mesh Scherzen, or we'll just call them side skirts. That's what they look like to me. It is nice though that they give you the actual name, because half the time I'm kind of wondering what the actual name is. And so once we have those done, we're almost done. We're getting very, very close to the end. Which it's a really nice, detailed, long build for what is really a simple kit. But it does give you a good amount of build time. It's not going to be 30 hours. I'd say it was probably 6 to 8. That's with sanding and cleanup, waiting for things to dry. I think I had about 2.5 hours of footage. 2 hours, 45 minutes, something like that. Obviously, we're not building everything on here, so somewhere in that 6 to 8 range. Now, these go together very, very well. Little intimidating, just not even seeing them, just thinking about like building these. It's like, oh, these are gonna be a mess. I'm gonna have to use, that what is that ammo glue I use, the ultra glue or whatever, for clear parts and for this. And I was like, it's gonna be a pain in the butt to do this. That's why I didn't build this kit right away when I got it. The instructions tell you to use instant cement on all of the metal parts in this kit. There's not a lot, but the instant cement works like perfectly. And I've tried it with other photo etch in the past, and it does not work. I don't know how it works on this kit. I don't know if there's a difference in the metal. To be honest, the metal does feel different than any other photo etch that I have used. And to be completely honest, I tend to steer away from photo etch. I don't even dislike photo etch. I hate photo etch, to be completely honest. So I don't have the most experience with it. I have a lot of bad experiences with photo etch. But this worked with instant cement, which is very, very interesting and very good if you are, maybe more of a beginner modeler. You don't have, all the tools you need for photo etch, something like that. It's very difficult to bend this photo etch. It's thin, but it's very difficult to bend, which is awesome. The only thing that you really have to pay attention to here is there's a front and a back, and it couldn't be more obvious when you're looking at it. One end or one side just straight up looks like chainmail, like mesh, right? Like it's supposed to. The other side is very flat and shiny. When you're looking at it, you cannot mess it up. If you are looking at each side back to back, just pay attention to which side is which, and I would suggest building up the left at one time and the right at one time. But that completes our build. If you guys have made it this far, I hope you enjoyed the build. I would ask you to like and subscribe. You'll see that gun sight moves as the turret moves. There's a lot of really cool features in this kit. This kit, again, this is an A+. It's a unique tank, or tank destroyer, or whatever. It's a unique vehicle, we'll call it. Can't get blasted for that. It looks different than anything else really out there. I've heard it compared to the Dragon kit. I forget who did it, but they had two kits. They had this and the Dragon, and they said, well, I never finished the Dragon, so we'll let it speak for itself. I have seen a couple other companies that offer this, but I couldn't imagine building any other kit. I couldn't imagine suggesting any other kit. This was an absolute pleasure to build, and I would definitely build one again. The only problem is I have a growing stash. Tamiya is releasing a bunch of new kits. Tacom has some great kits. Half Track and some others. I still have to build the Tiger, which looks epic. There's a lot of great kits out there. This is definitely one of them. This is like kit of the year type material, at least in my mind. So we'll do a painting video. We'll do some 3-color camouflage, maybe some polka dots, I don't know. On this kit, we'll get the tools painted up, and then eventually we'll do a weathering video as well for this kit. Again, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'll leave you with the model for the last minute or two here, just so you can see kind of that finished build product. But thanks again for watching.